All right, we are doing problems number 27, 28, 29, 30, and 31. They're mostly just midpoint problems. Remember, your midpoint formula is x1 plus x2 divided by 2 and y1 plus y2 divided by 2. We are going to go ahead and do the first problem. We'll do it in red. We have 27. Your coordinates are 2, 5, and negative 2, 13. Remember, this is point 1, so we have x1, y1, point 2, so we have x2, y2. When I plug it into the formula, we're going to have 2 plus negative 2 divided by 2, and my y's are going to be 5 plus 13 divided by 2. When we simplify that, we get 2 minus 2 gives me 0 over 2. 5 plus 3 is 18 over 2. Again, simplify once more. 0 divided by 2 is 0. 18 divided by 2 is 9. So your final answer would be 0, 9. I'm going to pause and erase, and then we'll move on to the next one. All right, we're going to do number 28. I'll do that one in blue. For 28, my points are negative 3, 5, and 1, 7. Again, this is point 1, so we have x1, y1. Point 2 has x2 and y2. When I plug it into the equation, I have negative 3 plus 1 divided by 2 and 5 plus 7 divided by 2. If I simplify, negative 3 plus 1 is a negative 2 divided by 2. 5 plus 7 gives me 12 divided by 2. And one last time, negative 2 divided by 2 is negative 1. 12 divided by 2 is 6. So my final answer would be negative 1, 6. Again, I'm going to erase, and then we'll do the last one. All right, and our last one, number 29, we're going to use negative 2, 5, and 8, negative 12 as our points. Again, this is point 1, so we have x1, y1. Point 2 has x2, y2. When we plug it in, we're going to have negative 2 plus 8 divided by 2, and 5 plus negative 12 divided by 2. Let me make my 12 not so ugly. There we go. Divided by 2. If we simplify that, negative 2 plus 8 is 6 over 2. And then 5 minus 12 is a negative 7 over 2. Again, we're going to simplify once more. 6 divided by 2 gives me 3. Negative 7 divided by 2 gives me a negative 3.5. So my final answer would be 3, negative 3.5. And that is your midpoint. For 30 and 31, we're given a midpoint and an endpoint, and we're trying to find our second endpoint. So I'm going to call this end 1. We're going to find M, which is our midpoint. Actually, let's do this. For E1, I'm going to write E1, and that's our endpoint 1. And then we have our midpoint, and then we have endpoint 2. Now, for all of these, we're going to look for endpoint 2, so I'm going to put a question mark there. I know that my endpoint 1, it says we're given one endpoint of CD, so C is going to be endpoint 1. So we have 4, 4. And then my midpoint is going to be the other one, negative 1, negative 2. And we want to figure out what this point here is. So the first thing I'm going to look at is how do I get my x's? So how do I get from 4 to negative 1? Well, I would subtract 5 from that. So to get my new x, we're also going to subtract 5. So when I do negative 1 minus 5, I get negative 6. Now we're going to do the same thing with our y's. How do I get from 4 to negative 2? Well, I would subtract 6. So again, I need to subtract 6 from this to get my final endpoint. So minus 6, negative 2 minus 6 gives me a negative 8. So my final endpoint would be negative 6, comma, negative 8. And that's your answer. We're going to do the same thing for the second one. Again, we have endpoint 1, your midpoint, your endpoint 2. And we're going to plug in whatever we know. So this time we have D, maybe that's endpoint 2. So it's negative 2, 9. It doesn't really matter where your endpoints go. Honestly, I would just always put them as the first one. So this could be negative 2, 9. And then your midpoint, I would always put in the middle, obviously, 8, 0, because, you know, midpoint means middle. Maybe that's not obvious, but it does. And then you want to see, how do I get from negative 2 to 8? Well, I need to add 10. So then we'll add 10 to 8, and we'll get our new x, which is going to be 18. And then we're going to do the same thing for our y's. So how do I get from 9 to 0? I would subtract 9. So then we're going to subtract 9 more, and that'll be our answer here, minus 9. So the final answer here would be 18, comma, negative 9. And that is your answer.